guys, it's Dr. Bickling from Own It Dental. As always, here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. And if you guys are enjoying these videos, please do hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button. It's right down below. It only takes you a second, and it's the ideal thing to do. Speaking of things that are ideal, today we're going to talk about what is the ideal schedule for your staff. So let's dig into it. All right, over the last three videos or so, I talked about why your patients leave, why your staff leaves, and what the benefits are of being open 7 days a week. Well, the basic gist of it is your patients leave because you either don't have room for them or you don't take their insurance. Your staff leaves because they get burnt out because they're working all the time, or there's no upward mobility. And then being open 7 days a week gives you a mathematical advantage over everybody else in the industry. And that's in addition to patients wanting to come and see you on evenings and weekends. But today we're going to kind of put it all together and we're going to say, what does that look like in real life? And the reason why I'm doing this is because oftentimes when I tell people that my offices were open 7 days a week, one of the biggest questions I get is, you mean you worked 7 days a week? And I think that that's a big misconception. The answer is no, I didn't work 7 days a week. I worked either 3 or 4 days a week. Personally, in dentistry, I think dentistry is so stressful. I don't think any dentist or anybody in the industry should work more than about 4 days a week. That's just my opinion. You might feel otherwise, but that's fine. But I think that people in dentistry should only work about 3 to 4 days a week. But the nice thing is about a 7-day work week is you're probably going to be open about 70 or 80 hours during the week. And that divides nicely into two 35 to 40-hour work weeks. The only thing is you're going to need 2 teams in order to accomplish that. So what does that look like? So this is how we ran our offices. We had 2 teams. We had Team A and Team B. And Team A would work all day Monday while Team B was off. All right. So they were open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and we had a 2-hour lunch break in the middle of the day. I'll talk to you a little bit about that in just a bit. But even though they had to work a long day on Monday, they had the whole next day off. So they got to sleep in the next day or get whatever done that they needed to do the very next day. And I tell you, it's really nice having a day off in the middle of the week. Then they came back Wednesday, had a short day, just had to work until 1 o'clock and then had the whole afternoon off. And again, they could do anything they wanted to do in that afternoon because they only had to work a half day on Wednesday. Thursday, they did have to come back and work another long day. But again, they had the very next day off, right, to rest and recover. And as you can see here, I had my staff work every other Saturday from 8 to 2, or they were off. So every other week, they not only were they off 2 days in the middle of the week, but every other weekend was a 3-day weekend. How can you beat that, right? And then Team B they just did the opposite here. Oh, let me get my finger. There we go. Team B just did the opposite, right? They were off on Monday, worked all day Tuesday with a 2-hour lunch break in the middle of the day. They came in the afternoon on Wednesday, and they were off on Thursday. And then Friday, they did have to work all day. But again, they were off every other Saturday. But you can see they were off every other Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. It was a 3-day weekend for them. So just a little different version of a schedule. And all of my staff only worked about 35 to 40 hours a week, depending on what time they came in and what time they left. So I would say, so you can see here that in this schedule with only 2 teams, they're only open 6 days a week. So I would suggest if you only have like 2 doctors, 2 sets of teams, that you split them up into opposite shifts, and then you can be open 6 days a week. But once you start getting into 3 or 4 doctors, you can have 3 or 4 sets of teams. That's when you can open up 7 days a week and have a very similar schedule to this. So what does that look like? So basically, we had 2 Team A's and 2 Team B's here. So we had Team A1 and A2, right? And both of the A1s and A2s, they would work right here. They would work the same, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday shift. But then one of the teams worked every other Saturday, and one of the teams worked every other Sunday. And then the opposite weekends, they were just off. And the same thing, you had 2 Team Bs. They worked the same shift during the middle of the week. And then one of the Team B1 would work on the Saturdays, and Team B2 would work on the Sundays. And they would just alternate weeks as well. So, one set of teams would be working on Saturdays and one set of teams would be working on Sundays. So it's the same thing. And we had two teams working together throughout the middle of the week. So everybody's only working about 35 to 40 hours a week, and they're only working about 3 or 4 days a week. Sure, two of them might be long days, but two of them are half days as well. So you got to take the good with the bad. So, but this gave our staff plenty of time to rest and recover, and plenty of that work-life balance that everyone is so keen on these days. So I'm more of a visual learner. These writing it down is nice, but I'm more of a visual learner. So I like to do it in blocks and colors and stuff. I'm kind of simple that way. So team one or team A would be the green here, and you can see they would work all day Monday, but be off on Tuesday. They'd work Wednesday morning and then work all day Thursday. Now you can see in the middle of the day, if they're working all day, we give them a 2-hour lunch break. Now, the way that would work would be half the team would go to lunch for an hour, while the other half stayed behind and maybe cleaned up the rooms or made reactivation phone calls. And then that half would come back to work, and the other half would go to lunch. And again, the ones that came back, they would probably set up for the afternoon patients, or again, continue to make reactivation phone calls. So even though there was a 2-hour lunch break, we were closed down for 2 hours in the middle of the day. Half the team would go to lunch while the other half stayed behind and did some duties around the office, and then they'd just flip-flop. And then on the weekends over there, I just have it green and blue just to indicate that they're alternating weekends. And you can see on this one with two teams, I think it works out nicely to be open 6 days a week. So on Sundays, we were off. But when you get to a point where you have 3 or 4 doctors, 1 or 2 of those teams can start to work every other Sunday. Right? And so it would look something like this. Basically, it's the exact same schedule. So, but what's really nice is if you look here, if you're on the green team, basically you're only working 3 days one week and 3.5 days the next. So that's the really nice thing. And then the opposite would be the blue team there. So, but this is what it looks like. However, this might not work for you. It might not work for your staff. I understand, not one schedule is perfect. But one thing that you can do is think about it in 6-hour increments. Think about your day in 6-hour increments, right? And if you do this, you're gonna block this up into, there's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6-hour increments for each team potentially. Now, I'm not saying they're gonna have to work these 6 exact shifts, but let's make up some rules here. You can tell your staff, you can say, hey, listen, you can work any 6-hour increments you want, but here are the rules. You have to work a minimum of 5 6-hour increments per week. And if you're going to work a back-to-back increment, such as an all-day increment, you get an hour lunch break in the middle of the day in there somewhere. At least 2 of your 6-hour increments need to be evening shifts, and you must work at least 2 weekend shifts per month. All right. So if you want to give your staff a little bit more flexibility, because remember, that's one of the things that staff wants, is they want a little bit of flexibility with their schedule. You can just say this here. We're going to block it off into 6-hour increments. You get to pick the increments you want. You have to work a minimum of 5 of those 6-hour increments per week. At least 2 of them have to be evening shifts. And I want you to work at least 2 weekend shifts per month. And so if you can do that and kind of piece that together to make your staff happy, it's basically the same thing. They're going to be working about 3 to 4 days a week. A couple of those shifts might be double shifts, but then they get to kind of pick the days and the times that work best for their schedule. They're getting that flexibility that they're looking for. They're getting the work-life balance, but they're also getting in the hours. They're serving the patients on the days and times that the patients want to be served. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. And again, when you're open 7 days a week, you're at such a huge advantage over everybody else in the dental marketplace. There's really no competition whatsoever. So in any case, but I kind of, like something a little bit more like this. I kind of like to keep it a little bit more standardized. And I just kind of, let my staff choose, which one of these schedules work a little bit better for you. Sometimes if the staff that works on Fridays, let's see, there we go. The staff that works on Fridays, they may be like, when do I have to work on Fridays? Well, offer this up. Hey, if you're going to work on Fridays, we'll pay you an extra $5 or $10 an hour, and just take volunteers. I guarantee you'll have some people that'll work on Fridays for an extra $5 or $10 an hour. So, sometimes you have to incentivize those behaviors. And we talked about incentives in previous videos. So you may have to add some of that into that as well. But something like this worked really well for me and my offices. And I encourage you to look into something like this as well. I'm encouraging all of you to be open 6 and 7 days a week. The benefits of it are just tremendous. So, and this is what it might look like. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm Dr. Bickling. Here's my contact information, and I'll see you on the next one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, go to ownitdental.com or click the link above and check out my services. I have dozens of hours of training videos and have negotiated reduced lab fees for all my clients. So if you want to get out of the dental chair and start owning your business, go to ownitdental.com and check out my services, and I'll see you soon.